Hello Mickey, welcome to my YouTube. If you have time after this video, please check out that basketball video also on my YouTube, using it for recruit right now. I'm videotaping from my room so you can see two older pictures of me, but I'm here today to talk about my presentation, and it is called Trade and Protectionist Policies. Alright, and so I'm hoping that you follow along with my presentation. I've attached it in an email with the link to this video. But today we will start with an overview of my presentation. We will start with an intro to protectionist policies, the triggers of protectionist trade policies, followed by the policies in response to the protectionist call. Next would be the critical review of the effectiveness of protectionist policies, and finishing with the parallels from the transplant to today's U.S. and China war, and our conclusion. Alright, so first of all, on this intro page, my three major points are that trade becomes an integral part to the wealth of nations, that the wealthy are insatiable and are the main benefactors of protectionist trade policies, and our four transplants that we'll be discussing today are coffee, cotton, sugar, and tea. And so countries that are open to international trade tend to grow faster, they innovate, improve productivity, and provide higher income and more opportunities to their people and for their people. Open trade also benefits lower income households by offering consumers more affordable goods and services. So these options, per se, given to the people of nations are very important. And so this leads to my second point, as protectionist trade policies tend to protect the wealthy more so than the middle and lower classes. And I would agree, and I would argue, yes, the economy grows, but it essentially improves because the upper class gains so much, and trickle-down economics says that when those at the top gain are the biggest benefactors, by the time it trickles down to the middle and lower classes, that there's no less benefit, or no more benefit, pardon me. And so moving forward to the triggers of protectionist trade policies. So for coffee, we have that the increased demand for the commodity, and that the consumer market advantage. And by those 2 points, I mean that during the post-colonial period, most of the African countries which had opted for socialism at the time for their economic system also adopted protectionism as an economic measure to favor certain politically preferred industries. Policymakers wanted to protect domestic industries from foreign competition through tariffs, subsidies, import quotas, and other restrictions on the imports of foreign countries' goods. Moving forward, we would talk about cotton and their high desire for luxurious fabrics, Great Britain's or Europe's, where India was a lead innovator because they specialize in advanced fabrics. They also sparked a high import demand for other countries, so other countries had to protect against India's successes in the textile market at the time. Moving forward, sugar, the biggest point I have here is labor conditions. Slavery is one of the most horrific and prolific eras in world history, and really is detrimental to any society, no matter the advantages, per se, for wealthy landowners. And then lastly, we have tea. And for tea, we have the 7 Years' War and the necessity to rebuild the economy. And these two kind of go hand in hand. And so following the 7 Years' War, Great Britain's national debt nearly doubled, crippling their domestic economy. And this forced Great Britain to protect the commodity they felt most valuable at the time. So these policies in response to the protectionist call, so again, we're going to start with coffee. That would be the Revolution Settlement of 1688. And so this followed the Glorious Revolution and essentially represents the transfer of power from the crown to a parliament, allowing for the regulation of commerce and trade to be controlled by said parliament. The overthrow of the dominion of New England and of the officials appointed by James II was a significant victory for the American colonies, and the colonies were freed temporarily and of the strict laws and of the not of James II. Moving forward, we would have cotton with the Prohibition Act of 1701, and this strengthened the Bill of Rights as well as banned the import of most common textiles into England, followed by the restriction of sale of most cotton textiles. It was a form of economic protectionism, largely in response to India, particularly Bengal, which dominated the world cotton textile markets at the time. And this act was the precursor to the Industrial Revolution, when Great Britain eventually surpasses India as the world's leading textile market manufacturer in the 19th century. Next, we would have sugar with the American Prohibition Act of 1808. And this act prohibited the importation of slaves and the operation of slave trade in the U.S. The act was designed to completely eliminate American participation in slave trade. As we know, this did not happen immediately. If anything, it began to turn the wheel, or even turn what wheel that was already there to begin the true ending of slavery and oppression. And to finish with tea, we have the Townshend Act and the Tea Act. And so the Townshend Act were a series of measures actually passed by the British Parliament in 1767. This taxed goods imported to the American colonies, but American colonists who had no representation in Parliament saw this as an act of abuse of power. As we see, this sparks a pretty big revolution, pretty big change in the world. And so the Tea Act's principal objective was to reduce the massive amount of tea held by the financially troubled at the time British East India Company in its London warehouses, and to help the struggling company survive. So these were the policies in response to the protectionist call. When critically reviewing the effectiveness of said protectionist policies, with coffee, the country's domestic coffee market was able to reemerge and also recover from import sales. This was great, positive for any economy, but by doing this, the country's tariff revenue actually decreased because of the deterrence of the international trade. So with protectionist policies, even as we go through these 4 transplants, we'll see that the positives and negatives almost weigh themselves out. And so when moving to cotton, we see that while squeezing out international competition, Great Britain's fabric and textile demand increased tenfold, forcing its domestic businesses to pick up the extra demand, thereby increasing the need for better processes and forcing the Industrial Revolution. This was essentially the beginning of a capital-driven economy that we see today in success. Next, we would have sugar, and this established some labor restrictions and pushed for the abolition of slavery, as said before, but these things wouldn't take effect for years and even decades down the road. And lastly, with tea, with the momentary increase of revenue in Great Britain, yet in light of the economic increase, the American Revolution became the largest result of protectionist policy over tea, leading to America severing ties with Great Britain. So this is seen as more of an economic downfall than an upward turn. Running out of time here. So as we talk about the parallels, I kind of spoke on them very generally. So point A, they focus on protecting domestic producers as well as positively affecting domestic wealth, decreasing the unemployment rate, also domestically, and then you want the further emergence of previously established businesses and the creation of other businesses due to economic advantages. So what protectionist policies did then and what protectionist policies are aimed to do now is completely protect the domestic market and make sure that it is moving in the positive direction as opposed to the negative. And so, in conclusion, in my own conclusion, not opinion, I would say the countries need to be more proactive about monitoring trade before coming to the point where protectionism is necessary for that economy to recover. Basically saying that if economies pay more attention to their economy as it begins to struggle, as opposed to when there's nothing else to do but implement protectionist policies, that would be the best route for said countries. And with that being said, protectionism is an efficient means to short-term gains, yet in the long term it hinders growth. And just like as I started this presentation, free trade is very big in the importance to the wealth of nations and the growth of economies really across the world. So thank you for a great semester, Professor Mohammed, and I hope to see you soon.